Thanks for staying with us here on Capitol tonight. I'm Ruben Jones in our D.C. studio this evening as the situation in Iran continues and many other stories happening here in Washington. We want to turn to Republican Congressman Mark Harris of the 8th District of North Carolina. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Hey, Ruben. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
And you. Let's start with Iran. Two-thirds of Americans right now say they are not satisfied with the Trump administration's handling of what's going on there. They're seeing these rising gas prices and some mixed messaging coming from the administration. Do you have any concerns with the president's handling of Iran right now?
Well, I think it's always important that we remember how we got here. And we got here because of 47 years of Iran really behaving badly. I mean, when you stop and think about the fact that they have been the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, and this president was willing to step up and say, look, when the situation presented itself that they obviously were pressing toward a nuclear weapon, that he said, no, you're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And that's where all of this began, to make sure that Iran would not in any way, shape, or form possess a nuclear weapon. And then, of course, that meant that we needed to take out their missile supply, which was continuing to grow. We needed to take out their manufacturing ability of those missiles, which was incredibly important. So all of those things we've always got to keep in mind. I realize it's a challenging time. I realize that it's certainly something we want to see this thing conclude, but we want to make sure we finish the job, what has already been started. And I think the president's doing a yeoman's task. I mean, right now, there's a lot of issues going on within Iran, just trying to figure out who to even negotiate with. And we've seen that happening as we're waiting at the negotiating table, even right now, for who has the power and the ability to even negotiate on behalf of Iran.
Timeline-wise, how comfortable are you with how much longer this can go?
Well, again, I think we want to see the job finished. And I think right now the blockade is working. I'm not sure we can put a hard, fast time on it, but I do think the president is moving to get it resolved as quickly as possible, but making sure that Iran does not have the ability. One of the big sticking points you got to keep in mind, and I understand that Iran, the leaders we are negotiating with, have already been willing to say they'll turn over that enriched uranium. That's going to be a very important piece. The president has said that's a key piece in negotiations.
Well, you are a member of Congress. You're also a pastor, and it brings you kind of a unique perspective on
Sure.
some of the controversies that the president has gone through from the religious community about some of the comments he's made. So I do want to get your thoughts on some of the posts that he's made, including on Truth Social. Easter Sunday, the president posted about Iran, "There will be nothing like it. Open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah." A few days later, he posted, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will." Should the president have apologized for those comments?
Well, the first one, of course, that is not the way I would have worded it, quite frankly. But I also understand on Easter Sunday morning that while all of us were involved in getting ready to celebrate Resurrection Sunday, he's still President of the United States and is in the middle of a major conflict with Iran. That message obviously was not to the American people. That message was to the Iranian leaders. Again, not the language I would have used or the approach I would have taken, but I understand he was doing that. And then the post that was done a couple of days later, obviously he is applying pressure. He is always negotiating. He is always taking a stand. And I think that was really what you were seeing in those posts. And again, I think that this war is moving, or this conflict is moving forward in a way that we want to see it. We want to see it come to a swift end. And the blockade, as I said, is working. It's key that Iran is struggling and wanting to get back to the negotiating table, it seems. They just got to figure out who has the power to negotiate right now.
Profanity is one thing, but saying a whole civilization will die is, some have said that that's a war crime because it goes against the Geneva Convention protocol. Do you think that the president should have apologized for saying a whole civilization will die?
Again, I think when you look at that one statement in the whole post, you recognize that he is speaking in hyperbole in the approach that he's taking.
But and I think that the United States.
He is the president of the United States. I understand that. But again, we're dealing with the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. Of course, that led into the conversation that went on with the Pope, as a matter of fact, and the text that went back and forth. And I said all along, I certainly expected the Pope to speak against war. That I understand. But we've got to quit treating America as the aggressor in this situation, because we've got to remember we're dealing with the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And you know as well as I do, Reuben, they have been at the center of all the instability that has gone on in the Middle East, from Hamas to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, the proxies that they've been behind, and they have been the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And so this president, instead of just talking about it, he has taken action.
The other post that he got some pushback for was this AI image, which appeared on the president's Truth Social page, which seemed to depict him as Jesus. The president took it down. He said he thought he resembled a doctor, not Jesus. If a member, though, of your congregation had sent you an AI image and had them as what looks to be Jesus, would you have told them not only to take it down, but, this is not appropriate?
Yeah, he did take it down, and I think that's the important part of it. How it went up, the fact that it went up, I think that's been some question in all of that. But I do think at the end of the day, he recognized that this was not an appropriate post,
he didn't go to
and
the
it
level
took
of
it down.
Apologizing, though,
No, but he took it down, and that's the thing. The president's made a number of posts he doesn't take down. He did take that one down.
Let's move on to gerrymandering. Virginia voters gave Democrats a win this week when they passed the approval for the state to pass a new congressional map that could secure them 4 new Democratic seats. Mm-hmm. We know that North Carolina has gone through this mid-decade redistricting. This was done at the urging as President Donald Trump started in Texas, then it went to California and other states. Was it a mistake for the president to make this push for mid-decade redistricting?
Well, time will tell how all of that turns out. Obviously, in Virginia, we're all looking at what happened there last night, in some sense of, or Tuesday night, in some sense of horror of what has taken place at a state that was 6-5. And we could talk about a lot of things with that race. We could talk about the misleading way the ballot was even put together and the statement that was on there. We could talk about the amount of money that was spent. I think it was $54 million that was spent. But at the end of the day, they took a state that was 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans and are now going to be 10-1 the way those maps are redrawn. The good news is, and it's not getting a whole lot of coverage, is that the very next day a circuit judge has said that that's not constitutional, the whole process wasn't, and that he has called for an injunction. He's put an injunction in place so they can't certify that race.
It's likely to go to the Supreme Court. They'll make that final determination and see. But, I mean, I talked with a political expert yesterday who said that right now, if you look at the maps, Democrats are coming out on top a little bit. When you put, in fact, all these mid-decade redistricting, we'll see what happens in Florida and Louisiana. But, right. I mean, are you worried that this decision to go down this route could end up hurting you and other, maybe not you, for example, but other Republicans that are in these tough races?
Well, I think it certainly could be something that time will tell, and it could hurt Republicans. I agree with that. It's very possible.
Congressman Mark Harris, always good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Reuben.